kick this off, there's a host of topics that we can talk about. I think first and foremost is I'm interested in hearing from some of you guys is what brought you out here? What was the thing you were looking to discuss first and foremost?
For me, to be honest with you, I really was actually really just interested in your story and what you really struggled with at first. I know when you said when you felt alone, who were some of the things, like what were some of the practices that you went towards and gravitated towards in order to kind of get you out of that zone?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost that you feel that at different points of your career, and I want to be transparent in something like I'm not really big when it comes to success or productivity or however people want to define those things. I'm not really big on a lot of the habits and hacks you hear about. I think loneliness and pain can be really good things in life. I think that we run from that stuff, but really that's kind of where you work on yourself from the inside out, right? Like people will do whatever they can now to seemingly run away from failure and pain. I think a big thing is like early on, one of the biggest struggles I had is, listen, I wasn't a former power lifter. And so I was a part of some staffs that everybody had shaved heads, everybody was a former power lifter, and me of all people got called pretty boy on the staff. You know, and I already, it was like you didn't belong. And because my first internship was at Athletes Performance, I mean, there were a lot of people that thought like, I remember one of the first things somebody said to me is, so who else have you read other than Mark Verstegen? And this person like knew nothing about me. They just assumed because I'd interned there that I was some like convert. And that's when I first kind of got exposed to this team setting versus private sector dynamic that used to exist that I think is going away more and more now as a new generation comes up. But already then I sensed a barrier. And then I sensed it again when I couldn't, you know, has anybody here done a graduate assistantship at a university? Well, like, yeah, so, you know, like no job is guaranteed after that at all. And I had applied 3 or 4 places. All of them had already, by the time the job was open, they had also slammed shut. They hired from within. But you don't know that when you start out because you see them on the NSCA message boards. You get your resume ready. You have your manual. You're so, you know, you're locked in. You're like, oh, I've got to be a shoo-in for this. And what they don't tell you is like, no, that position's already closed. So I remember I was looking for a job. My GA was up. I was making $10,000 a year as a graduate assistant, which was enough to pay rent and like SpaghettiOs or whatever else. And I took a job in the private sector. And as I was leaving my last day, guy was like, you know, you just committed career suicide, right? You'll never get back in the team environment. I go, what do you mean? And he's like, it's fact, man. Anybody that ever leaves is kind of like, you're on your own now. So like, good luck and basically piss off. So I think you take those things and all you can do is kind of just, naivete is a good thing. At that point in your career, you don't believe in them. You're just like, fuck it. Like if I do a good job and I just kind of maintain a straight path, like, you know, no worries. But I think you have to be really selective at what you let kind of eat away at your self-confidence because that leads to a behavior that's just, it perpetuates in the kind of actions that validate that, right? But I still kept in touch with tons of friends that were in the team setting and I ended up getting offered jobs down the road. And the irony is that gentleman ended up asking me for a job later on. And so what you realize and how I'll encapsulate this is realize that even when you feel alone or people are kind of just coming at you with shit, it's usually a manifestation of their own insecurities and they're usually projecting their own stuff onto you. And for whatever reason, it could be they perceive you as a threat. It could be they're just not happy people. It could be that maybe is what happened to them in their careers. You know, you hear about that a lot with opening a business, right? Like talk to Kenny and his wife here, like, you know, you've been here how long?
10 years at this spot.
And how many people told you you're batshit crazy?
A lot. Yeah, I remember when we were buying it, yeah.
Right. Sure. So I think there's just, you got to have a short memory with that and stubbornness.
They were right.
Yeah, they were right. And Kenny is batshit crazy. But does that answer your question from my end?
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
I know for me, one of the reasons I decided to come in here and talk to everybody is, I'm actually in the middle of a career change right now. So I own 2 gyms as of, next 3 days.
Congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
We have the one in Salt Lake City, which actually propped up the one here in Pasadena, and the one in Pasadena didn't do so well, so we decided to kill it early before it drug out the whole company. Needless to say, I'm staying out here in LA because my wife's in post-production with the film stuff, and so that means I gotta find a job. So, and you know, it's navigating that whole thing where selling my gym, selling off my, getting rid of the LLC, getting rid of everything that I built.
Did you have employees too?
What?
Did you have employees at the time or contractors?
I laid them all off because it's just been me now for the last 3 months. You know, me and my wife should be helping out with classes here and there. But it's just been like this humongous, like, dear God. And there's literally, like you said, no resources out there. Like, oh, here you go this direction. I mean, yeah, I got a pretty badass resume, that's great. But, you
Nobody's reading the shit.
No, and then when I take it to, say, an independent gym like this, lots of people are like, oh, you're too qualified. Oh, you're gonna be in my competition. Oh, you've written your own certification. Okay, well, we don't really want that, so, do whatever, go find a way. And so that leaves me with what? I don't have a master's degree, I've got a bachelor's degree, but I can't go work in a pro team setting because I don't have a master's degree. I can't go work in my old job with special operations because, I have 10 years of experience in special operations, but God forbid I go work with them because I don't have a master's degree, or time in D1, or time in, Olympic level caliber. They will go to the fact that I did the job. And so it's like, well, now we're fucked up.
Right.
And, so I'm never going to be economics, which I see as like a big, gigantic, evil empire of everything I see in coaching. And they're offering me, they're talking about fitness standards, and they're like, well, shit, man, do I turn down $9,000 a year and sell, or do I sell my soul and say, screw it, you paycheck?
Yeah, well, and think about what you just said, and I want to turn it over to somebody else to speak up on this. You did the damn job, and what's the advice we all get, right? And you can pull up a million videos on this. So I want to be a strength, get your degree, get a certification. What else do they usually tell you? What's the old advice?
Go get an internship.
Go get an internship. Anything else? Have faith.
Go volunteer in some places, go follow.
Yeah, all that shit is really good. Having faith, great, but if you don't have a blueprint, then what do you do with it? And you're spot on, because then it's now you're gate kept for being too qualified, yet you were told you had to do those things to be qualified to begin with. Those are minimal standards now, have a math. I remember somebody the other day reached out to me and they go, do you know anybody that'd be interested in working in Major League Baseball? I go, well, what's the position? They go, minor league coordinator, which is awesome, by the way. Most people think major leagues is the best gig. Minor league coordinator, you don't have to travel near as much and you're working with people that are super hungry, but they go, it's paying $28,500. They need a master's degree and they have to be bilingual. I go, now stop, this is a really good deal. But just so I can sweeten the pot for somebody, tell me this, what kind of benefits do they get? And they're like, they laughed. Then I'm like, yeah, man, I'll have a list of names for you to buy tomorrow. What are you talking about? You can't even, and you're an asshole now if you even pass that stuff on to people. But anybody have anything to add to, anybody been through that experience before that can kind of offer advice? Oh, wait, tell me your name again. Chris.
As far as advice goes, I'm not, I guess I'll tell you into that. Even with the facility that I'm working at right now, I've been physically told by my manager that my boss, the owner of the actual gym himself, doesn't even care about my certifications and my qualifications. He's actually asked somebody with 0 certifications to actually lead the gym and the gym and conditioning program. Even having a CSCS, he was like, they don't care about how qualified you are, how smart you are, they just care about your energy and what you're able to give as far as stroking his ego is essentially what it came down to. So even then, that's something that now I don't even have, I'm not even scheduled for hours now because of that.
You're not scheduled for any hours.
Because of the, and then afterwards what ended up happening was they actually ended up hiring interns who could work for free. And at that point, these guys are, like I said, I don't really technically know the guys, got to meet them a little bit. And by all means, get yours.
Yeah, well, it's not their fault. They're put in that position.
Yeah, they went for the position, or whatever the case was. They opened up some intern spots. And then me and the newly hired other strength coach who had a basic certification, nothing against her as well, but we were getting paid, and then all of a sudden now it's a matter of, hey, you don't fit the mold because you're too.
Is that a gen pop sort of place?
It's a private gym. Right. It's a private gym, but it's just ran a certain way.
But private gym for athletes or for?
It's for athletes and celebrities and a couple other people here.
Yes, Brett, this is a crazy thing, right? All you guys are so educated. I don't come from a coaching background. And you have this amazing group of people that have so much education, and somehow in this sort of field, education doesn't always sort of win the day, which is unbelievable. When I hear that, I just go they'd rather have someone with high energy that puts someone on boost balls and we joke about this.
Yeah, 100%.
Boost balls that are sort of doing squats.
Yeah.
And that's no offense to boost balls.
Nobody's offended here. Yeah. Yeah, you're fine. We all know.
So the whole point is that's just nuts, and it makes me sad hearing that because as a gen pop myself, I love training with really highly educated coaches. That is what sort of drives you to become better. But it seems like the gyms or fitness centers have such a short view on their clientele. It's like, okay, we might only have them 6 months or 12 months, and we're just going to achieve, a small goal because we might lose them.
Well, what you've run into now is there's so many different options for people, places to train, that even if you do run a first-class performance center, fitness center, whatever, you're relying on the general public, one, understanding the difference, right, between good training and bad training, and two, giving a shit. Because some people don't train for the same reasons, right? Some people really love to track metrics. They have long-term goals. They don't mind it's almost like steady, just compound interest. It's like good investing. It's boring. You don't get into the day trading. But then there's other people that just they're chasing a feeling, right? Or they literally, pun intended, want to exercise their demons. So now it's but then here's the other part of that. So then how can you combat that? Because we need to all focus on, there needs to almost be somebody at the end of everything we all say that's so what? Right? Because otherwise we just talk about problems and there's no proposed solutions with shit. But this is why it always just was crazy to me when we shouldn't learn marketing. People say, oh, you shouldn't worry about marketing, or social media gets, shit on a lot. And for sometimes the right reasons or whatever, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we like. It matters what we can adapt to. Because the only way to reach a market that may be uneducated or just doesn't care about these little nuances, you still got to find another way to reach those people. Because are they thinking with a rational brain or more emotional part of their brain? And of course there's interplay between both. But we know the majority of people out there are thinking just, what's the emotional trigger? Why should I come there when this is cheaper? Well, hey man, you pay for value. That's why we're $200 a month and they're $15 a month. Here's the issue. We've commoditized training too much in the past and not enough coaching. Coaching is not commoditized. There's a well-known story about everybody's Jesse Owens and just the absolute phenom that he was. Jesse Owens, there was somebody that he beat by 0.4 of a second before he really went on to the Berlin Olympics and became Jesse Owens. Anybody have any idea who he beat in a race by 0.4 of a second? Mac Robinson. Now, Mac Robinson, that name doesn't mean anything to you, but anybody ever heard of Jackie Robinson? Jackie Robinson, Mac Robinson was his younger brother, and he was a track phenom. After he lost to Jesse Owens, and I'm paraphrasing here, after he lost to Jesse Owens in these Olympic trials, they say that Mac Robinson went on to become a janitor at, I think it was an all-whites middle school or something like that, and then ended up managing, I think it was a liquor store, don't quote me on that part of it, and then Jesse Owens obviously went on to become a legend. Now when they ask Mac Robinson, what was the biggest pain point with that, or what do you attribute to, what was the biggest difference there? Mac Robinson was Jesse got the coaching. He was we were both pretty neck and neck when it came to just raw, absolute speed, but that dude got the coaching. Now think about that, how it pertains here in strength and conditioning. There's not a whole lot of coaches managing or coaches coaching other coaches in regards to business, ethical ways to market. All we look at it is, there's two ways. There's people that don't have a lot of integrity, and then there's people that are out there doing it, but nobody's really educating around it. And then there's just, what are the solutions for these things? Right? Because when they come out, they're not CEU approved, so most people aren't going to buy them, right? Or I remember anytime I've gone to a career development thing, it was 7 a.m. in an exhibition hall. In the meantime, everything in the main stage was the same speed presentation you feel like you saw year after year after year. So has anybody to that point found a way to market themselves or what they're doing in a way that was creative, ethical, worked, helped you get out of a sticking point? So whether you are looking for a new gig, because they look at your shit and they're you're too qualified. I would argue that there's probably a way that you could, and this sounds so ridiculous you would even have to do that, you could probably doctor up the resume a little bit to take some of that overqualified sting out of it. Because we're so used to, here's the thing with resume writing. You have to write for the person reading it. So you have to know what's the likelihood of this person being intimidated, or what's their biggest pain point? And then you have to use kind of marketing savvy to write that ad now in a way that they want to see the shit. Does that make sense? And I think that's a potential solution. It's not a cure-all. This is a place to share ideas. But remember, you're writing for them. Just like when you talk to athletes, you're not hey, we're gonna do heavy squats today. It's really great. The neuromuscular system's gonna get potentiated. Fucking motor units all over the place. This is great. You're hey, this can reduce the risk of ACL injury, help you play the game longer, and help you run faster. Everybody want to do that? Cool. Shut up and start squatting. So with resume writing, it appeals too. But anybody else strategy there or thoughts on that?
That's right on. I mean, with that. that, like in terms of trying to show value in what you're doing rather than over-explaining it. Because I've been a CrossFit gym, so trying to explain to people like, you really don't need to be doing any fucking snatches or overhead squats there, lady. You're 47 years old and you've never touched a barbell in your life. But I obviously don't say it like that.
Right.
Yeah, approaching it in a way where you can show a little bit more what you can give in terms of value. Because I know I'm sure everybody here is always worried about like, I'm afraid to offer that price because you're going to get no. I think is one of the things.
Which is funny when you think of what people pay for other stuff in their life. And then again, like we've devalued coaching, and that's why we're in this position in the first place, because like coaching as a commodity isn't something that like people just feel like they can get that anywhere. And that's have we looked at coaching the wrong way? Like what is a coach? What would you guys say? And don't worry about formality of the definition. Like just how would you say, like how would you define a coach? I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm Shirley.
I'm Brett. Shirley, thanks for
guide.
coming. Appreciate it. A guide? Yeah. Perfect. Anybody else? The first thing that comes to mind? Leader? Yeah. All right.
Something that helps you get better.
Okay. So imagine you had 30 seconds to explain to Shirley why she needs a coach. Like where do you even start?
Probably, I guess I would start with her and see like where her background is and where she's coming from.
Start by asking questions, seeking to understand, finding pain points. Yeah, and like that's what I mean with the resume thing. We typically think that like we have to commodify ourselves and be like, hey, this is me, and like it's all your best shit. But like not everybody deserves the A material there. And I don't mean like your clients or people that you're working with, but I mean like it might not be the appropriate message to send them. Now a lot of that is what, and we talk about it in the course in May, is like it's called impression management. When you think of impression management tactics, everybody does this shit. When you wake up and you brush your teeth, that's a form of impression management because you're choosing to brush your teeth and take care of your hygiene. When you decide what to wear, that's impression management. Anybody have in-laws in the room? When you take your shoes off or like you go meet them and you might be in the car listening to whatever, using whatever kind of language, you meet your in-laws, you're like, hi, Debbie. Like impression management is no other, it's just a form of marketing, right? Marketing isn't some like salesy, gimmicky, oh my God, this is some dirty term. Marketing is a communication method. It's saying, hey, I have something that like meshes with a pain point or an expectation here. And this is where I think is a huge gap in coaching. We've been taught that marketing is bad, and therefore we don't know how to do that. But we auto-regulate our training. We auto-regulate our training, but we don't auto-regulate anything else to do with our communication, and we don't periodize our careers for shit. What are some other strategies or other pain points? Because a lot of this, it may seem like we're gonna move on. A lot of this shit will end up tying together, okay? But I wanna come back to that, yeah.
I think the main thing is really go like, what do you want? If like say for example Equinox 90,000, I don't want to go there. But if your just goal right now is that money right now for why your wife's doing the thing, then you shift out. It really comes down to what do you want like for yourself and your energy, and then the resume with different people. Like you might be overqualified, but you might like really not even want to be there anyway. You know what I mean? So it really goes down to like where your energy is and who you want to serve. Like as a coach, I feel that we're in the service industry.
Sure.
And then getting out of them, what do they want? Like, yeah, 47-year-old lady snatched over. Like, that's really not what she wants. What she wants is to live a high quality life, and she can be productive and make more money or whatever, be there for her family, like whatever. So when you can tap into what they really want and show them what you can do can make them get what they really want, then you're gonna make that connection. And when you figure out what you really want for your long term, this is what's hard because same thing with me. I was a strength coach at Division I. I did the whole GA paid internship. I had 2 masters and I had a paid internship. I did that whole route.
Overqualified.
Yes.
No job for you.
And then I was at SC, I was a strength coach, won a national championship, so I had all those things, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna just have my own business. I'm like, people will come, and it doesn't work like that. And so then I was like, okay, well, who do I want to work with? And same thing, I almost gave up. I went to Nordstrom's looking for a job. Like, I was like, I'm done. Like, I need money. I got to pay bills, But then I realized I got to go, who do I want to work with? What do I want to do? And I had to hustle and did that and create what I created now. I teach. I'm at a community college. And I teach intro to kin, and this is like the topic that I'm passionate about because it's like I want to help them, but I'm like, really, you don't need an education too, because that's what I'm seeing, you know. And then I'm a strength coach to 4 local high schools, so I was able to go out and create that myself, because that's who my passion is youth athletes. So I'm, you know, by myself doing that. But so I figured out, what do I want to do? Who do I want to serve? And made it happen, although it was a struggle to get there.
Well, I think that it evolves though, right? Like, I mean, that's just like anybody that thinks they get in this field and 90% of them say they want to work with pro athletes, and then you ask them why and they have no fucking clue. You know, they just really, what a lot of them want is affiliation, and they want credibility, and they look at that as a fast route to get there, where it's like, if I'm evaluating anybody for a coaching job, first thing I'm looking at is how they work with kids. You know, how do they work with somebody that can't blink and breathe at the same time? And do they look like they're actually enjoying that? Because it's like, why would I put you with Dustin Pedroia when you can't even keep Sally, Susie, Jimmy, and Janie, you know, locked in? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous.